All right, here we go. Here we go. For real, this and money, all the binary talk and think. I'm going to share my opinion, why I think it matters. But before we get into all that, got to drop the intro one time.
I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Ooh, I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Ooh, that's right. I don't need nothing else. That's right.
Hey, what's going on? It's Ruslan with KingsDreamENT.com. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire you to live out God's dream for your life. That looks like all kinds of different ways. Primarily, we talk about music, marketing, that kind of stuff. But we also do talk about financial literacy, fitness, health, culture, and the like. Now, I am a solutions guy, right? I like to see things that are going on. I like to solve problems. That is my heart. That is one of the things that I hope this channel accomplishes for some of you. So when it comes to this idea of money, I think I'm looking at just much more pragmatically and objectively than I am from a spiritual or existential viewpoint. Now, those of you guys that are with us live, appreciate you. Give this video a thumbs up. That helps a ton. Let me know where you are watching this from. And we're going to be talking about some stuff that's going to be super fun on the topic of money and Christians in particular and the different viewpoints and my viewpoint ultimately. But yo, shout out to everybody who pre-ordered one of these hoodies. These joints sold out in every size but medium. I think we got a handful of mediums left. So thank you guys. Shout out to the King's Dream Patreon community, most talented community in all the universe. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be talking with you guys. Again, if you're watching this live, even if you're watching a replay, let me know where you're watching this from. Always appreciate that. So look, there's usually two binary opposite points of view when it comes to the church and money. And by the way, just so we're clear, I think money is primarily an exchange of value. And I think because it's an exchange of value, so many of us look past the very practical side of money and we hyper spiritualize it or we politicize it, right? And I think Christians don't look at it in the context of where we are as a society, where we are with 2020 technological advances, the opportunity to start a business right on your smartphone, leverage with platforms, all these different things that we could be doing and probably should consider doing with technology. And now you're seeing, because of the COVID thing, you're seeing a lot more leverage of technology, right? And so Christians tend to have two polar opposite points of views when it comes to money. One point of view, we'll just flat out call it what it is. It's the prosperity gospel. If you give your life to Jesus, God will make you healthy, wealthy, and blessed. He will make a vehicle rain down from the clouds. If you want a Tesla, he'll give you a Tesla. If you want to make more money, he'll make more money. That's the prosperity gospel. If you obey God, if you love God, he will bless you monetarily. Now, does God bless us monetarily? Of course he does, right? He's the resource for all things. But it attaches in a weird, toxic way salvation and obedience to like materialistic and financial blessing. Most of us would be like, we don't rock with the prosperity gospel. But now, herein lies like the opposite extreme. I don't know what to call it. I guess you would call it the poverty gospel. But it removes all nuance and it removes all context in terms of where we are. And it's just basically the view that, hey man, Jesus was homeless, Jesus didn't have any money, and therefore we shouldn't worry about money, right? The opposite side. And this view, I think, is equally as problematic, right? It's two different polar opposite views, and it's equally as problematic. And they'll quote verses sometimes out of context. For the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And they'll talk about just negative things about store up treasures in heaven, right? Which most of us know these scriptures. If you've been a Christian, you heard about these scriptures, right? Don't store up your treasure here, store it up in treasure. I agree with that, right? And the prosperity people are like, no, God will cause you to prosper. I know the plans I have for you to prosper. Look at what God did for Solomon. Look at what God did for this person, right? It is like very on this side. And I think that neither one of them is a helpful position. The prosperity gospel is not helpful, in my opinion, because what's true for any Christian, biblically speaking, should be true for every Christian. So if any Christian anywhere can get rich, then you can't, like, if there's economic disasters, if there's, things that are happening, you can't just objectively say, well, all Christians are supposed to be rich, because that's just not scriptural, right? And then the flip side is the poverty gospel just completely removes what I would call a commonsensical free trade approach to money, which is, if a man not work, he ought not eat. Anyone who does not provide for the needs of his family has denied the faith and is worse than a non-believer. Multiple passages that promote that, right? So healthy stewardship. And there is this weird thing of diminishing returns in our context in America, where the more money you make, you don't necessarily become more happy or healthy. The more money you make, and they say on average, right? It's different in California and New York, but on average, they say it's about the 72,000, 75,000 mark. When you start making more money than that, maybe you have too much access to excess, but there's no longer a correlation. When you're dirt poor, you're not happy. And they say when you're very, very, very wealthy, you're not necessarily happy, because you are, you create other issues. You create other issues when there aren't any, right? You start having too much access to things. So that's an interesting topic, right? Now, I put this up, and I think that the issue in all this is that we just tend to be lack of self-awareness in our own position, right? Like a self-awareness of what we want. And I'm going to pull this up. I posted this on Instagram. By the way, one of my lowest engaged posts on Instagram. I said, we all want the same things, right? To be healthy, wealthy, and happy, or fit, right? How we arrive at those three things may be different. Financial freedom, wealth positions you to get healthy, fit easier. Happiness is existential, which is just a fancy way of saying, like, it's not, it's inside, it's outside, it's deeper, right? And then it said, and if you hate wealth, you probably want status or power of some sort. Now, that I think is like, don't we all want to make a little bit more money, unless we already have money? Don't we all want to be healthy and fit, unless we already are fit? And don't we all want to be happy? Now, I know the joy of the Lord, and I know that happiness is circumstantial, and joy is, yes, all of that. But you still want to be happy, right? You still want to be happy. Like why are we in denial about this? And check it out. These are the type of comments I got. And this is not by a reflection of everybody. These are just the ones that stood out to me, right? This the first comment I got. Nah, I just want Jesus. You just want Jesus. You don't want a roof over your head. You don't want food, shelter, clothing. You don't want to have a little bit of extra money to go, I don't know, eat out at a restaurant. You literally just want Jesus. Okay, so this is where this like pious, religious, arrogant type vibe comes from, all that, right? Like, I just want Jesus. Okay. Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added on to you. What was he talking about? He's talking about your needs, right? He was talking about all these other things, right? What you wear, where you sleep. Next comment. I would say my flesh wants all of that. And this idea that materialism is correlated to your flesh or your carnal nature. This is actually a Gnostic concept. The Gnostic Gospels, which were turned away by the church by and large, believe that all things materialistic and were carnal and fleshly and bad, right? Christians don't believe that. We don't believe anything. We can enjoy food. We can enjoy sex. We can enjoy time with our family, right? Not everything physical and materialistic is bad for us, right? And so to start with that, like, I would say my flesh definitely wants that. On the other hand, then he goes on to say, on the other hand, the Spirit of God that dwells in me tells me that I should never, tells me that I should never have any of it. I will be content with just him. I have many more thoughts, but I try to sum it up. And I think what he was trying to say is, like, if he never had any of it, he would be content with Jesus. And yes, power to you. I would be content if I just had Jesus and I was on an island and I just had the Bible and can feed myself, like, for sure. For sure. So, and again, this is another one that people throw out, right? It is, I see you, Jake Green. Thank you for chiming in. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Pretty much sums up money for we should need basic survival, but not much. Okay, so this is the thing. We can find a verse to say anything, bro. You can find a verse to say anything. Okay, here's the thing. Scripture has to interpret Scripture. Scripture has to interpret Scripture. This is basic, like this is how we approach hermeneutics, Bible study. So you can't pull one verse and say, ha, got him, right here, ha, rich man can't enter the kingdom of heaven, ha, right? Eye of a needle, right? What is that verse about? That verse is actually about salvation, because the disciples who viewed wealthy people in that, see, in our society, we vilify wealthy people, right? Maybe because they're too lavish, too over the top, maybe because they have too much wealth, right? So we vilify them. In that society, they looked up to wealthy people. They correlated wealth to success and favor with God, right? Again, they probably had more of kind of like a prosperity gospel position on some of this stuff. So what happened was they viewed these people as more holy because they were more wealthy. And then they said, Jesus says, you know, a rich man can enter heaven of God. And he said, and what did they say? They say, well, how is it possible for anyone to be saved? That's what the verse right after that says. How is it possible for anyone to be saved? If a wealthy person who they esteemed and thought was more favored by God, if that person can enter heaven, how does anyone save? Then Jesus says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. What is he saying? He's saying that salvation is only possible with God. That is what he's saying. Salvation is through God, that God can save whoever he wants. That's actually a verse about salvation, not about burying your money and giving all your money away. Why? How do we know that? Well, because we knew Paul was a tent maker, because we knew Paul connected with business owners like Aquila and Aquila, right? We know all these other things. So again, you got to interpret Scripture. Has to interpret Scripture. You got to read the entire passage, and we got to look at all of it. We can't just pull one verse out. That's neither here nor there. And this isn't intended to be a Bible study about money. There's tons of those. But it is telling that even in this live comment section that we have some of these very toxic views about finances. And in all of this, whether God has called you to be wealthy or poor or whatever, we remove our modern day context. We remove the fact that we live in a society, we live in a free market economy. Again, we like to demonize capitalism because that's cool, right? But we live in an environment where almost anybody who's of sound body and able mind, almost anybody can build wealth for themselves. How? How do you say? How do you say? And this is what I want to get to. Again, watching this video, thank you so much for watching this. 30 of y'all watching this, give this video a thumbs up. It's only 14 likes. It helps me out a ton. But check it out. When I was in high school, I had two professors. One professor was named Mr. Tambo. He was my senior year professor for what's my high school teacher. We didn't have professors. Teacher. Tambo was the dopest English teacher ever. Matter of fact, our English class wasn't even an English class. He just called it communication theory. Tambo was the football coach. Tambo drove a Hummer. Tambo was very wealthy from real estate, right? And he was Italian. And we always used to tease and say he was in the mob. And according to Tambo, the mob didn't exist. Right, hilarious dude. And Tambo was a bit more conservative, a bit more Republican in his views, fiscal conservative. And then I had another teacher, Mr. Hidalgo. Mr. Hidalgo taught history. And I remember one year, I think my senior year, I had both of them, and they were dope. Both of them dope. And Tambo's big thing was like, yo, take any extra money and put it in real estate. Mr. Hidalgo said, if you want to be rich, and he told us this, when we were 16, 17 years old, he told us, he said, if you want to be wealthy, live on half of what you make, and put the rest into mutual funds into our stock market, right? And he was also one of those guys, very wealthy, very wealthy. Both of these guys were just bored. They taught high school because they were bored. They didn't have nothing else to do, right? And so, boom, Mr. Hidalgo tells me, if you want to be wealthy, take half of everything you make. I had a little job at Pizza Hut. I lied on my application. Said I was 15. Said I was 16 when I was really 15. Been working at Pizza Hut. So I had a little money. My mom made me save and buy my first car in cash, right? All that money. I think it took me, I don't know, like a year or so of working, saved, right? And he said, yeah, if you're living at home, he said, if you're living at home and you're in high school, save half of what you make, put it in mutual funds. And then he said, once you move out, put 20% of everything you make into mutual funds. And at the time, I couldn't get anybody to take my money. I was too young, right? I was too young. And to get into a mutual fund back then, You have to have like 3 bands. And I didn't have 3,000. And anytime I talked to anybody about owning a small account, yeah, I couldn't get into it. And so guess what happens? And by the way, I had a personal finance class my senior year that also told me about avoiding debt and making stupid decisions with money. And you know what I did? As a saved Christian, I got out of high school with this information, with practical examples, access to wealthy people, asking the right questions at a young age. Personal finance class. This is a public school, guys. Like, had the opportunity, had the alley-oop. And you know what happened? I got out of high school and I made every stupid decision you could possibly make with money. As a Christian, I went into debt. I racked up freakish amounts of debt, credit cards, buying shoes on eBay. I got a brand new car note with a zero, it was like $1,000 down payment, 0 miles, right? For like 5 years. I co-signed on a condo with my mom. That condo went into foreclosure. The second mortgage did not go into foreclosure. I was still on the hook for that second mortgage, right? Boom, went into that debt. Then the HOAs ended up going into forbearance or something like that. I got sued for those HOA fees, right? I was already moved out. I had student loans. And I was going to college for free, by the way, but it took me so long to finish college because I didn't really know what I was doing that I racked up student loans. So I wake up, it's 2009, and I have $45,000 of debt and this second mortgage. I was a newlywed, right? We had just moved out. It's a newlywed, $45,000 in debt, and Belief called me. One of my really good friends called me and was like, yo, you heard about this Dave Ramsey guy? And I was like, nah, who's Dave Ramsey? He's like, oh, it's kind of like the Crown Financial stuff you did at the church. And I was like, okay, what is that? And he was like, you learn financial literacy. And I was like, oh, cool. So Belief calls me. I discovered Dave Ramsey. In a matter of 18 months, me and my wife paid off $45,000 of debt. In that 18 months, I got sued. I really thought I was going to have to file for bankruptcy because I discovered that second $60,000 mortgage on my credit. I was able to settle with them for $1,000 because I just was listening to Dave Ramsey. And all I did was listen to Dave Ramsey every day, followed his baby steps. We paid off $45,000 of debt in 18 months. We then subsequently saved 6 months of living expenses. I was working at the church, and because we had that 6 months saved, and because I learned how to hustle, and because I learned how to work hard and work on my craft, I read Dave Ramsey's Entrepreneurship book. And some people are like, oh, Dave Ramsey's legalistic. He doesn't really pay attention to a lot of nuance, but by and large, his principles changed my life. And I started doing shows, and I was doing the Man Up Conference and some of these things with like LaCroix and the Reach guys. And I kept meeting Christians who loved Jesus, but had like awful understanding of just practical living. Awful understanding of finances. Just their lives were a mess. And I'm like, yo, I'm going through this. This is life-changing. I'm losing weight in the process. I'm getting fit. Like everything, my marriage is getting better. Everything got better. And I say all that to say that I had the setup. I had the alley-oop. I had all the information up front. I knew what I wasn't supposed to do. And I still made every single mistake I could make with money as a Christian, as a born-again Christian in church. Nobody sat me down and told me these things. Right? And I had to go outside of my local church, discover Dave Ramsey. Subsequently, after that, we taught a class. We took hundreds of people through our church, through his Dave Ramsey course. I think collectively as a church, we paid off close to $1 million of debt. Like when you add up all the individual families and the money, it's amazing, right? And so now I was like, yo, there's this app. It's called Robinhood. I started investing into mutual funds, right? I'm getting a 25% return. Now, granted, the market's all over the place, but just parking some money in ETFs is what they're called in the Robinhood app. And Robinhood, there's a link in the description for Dave Ramsey, a link in the description for Robinhood. I got 25% return, right? Imagine if I would have had the Robinhood app when I was a kid. Imagine that. Like, imagine if I would have had access to people who could have helped me with some of these things when I was a kid. And so what do I want to be? I want to be Mr. Hidalgo and Tambo to some of you guys that are younger that haven't made a bunch of mistakes with your money yet, right? And if you've made some mistakes with your money, as have I want to show you where the ladder is. I just want to be like, yo, the ladder's over there. Like baby step 1, go save $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step 2, go snowball your debts. If you don't have any debt, man, get on the Robinhood app. Start investing into your own business. Start building wealth. So the question, if you are of able-bodied, sound mind, just about anybody can build wealth. And by wealth, I don't mean you're going to be a billionaire. I don't mean you're going to be Jeff Bezos. I just mean abundance. 50% of current marriages end in divorce, right? And they say that number is not too far off in the church either. I unfortunately have a lot of Christian friends that have gotten divorced. And you know what the majority of those divorces is about and the issues is about? Money. Lack of money, lack of financial freedom, right? A lot of people are overweight. A lot of people, they're saying by the year 2030, I believe the statistic was over half the population is going to be morbidly obese in America, right? And we got this weird like lower middle class thing where we have so much access to excess, but we don't have access to time because of the type of work we have to do and the gig economy and this whole thing. It's very difficult to eat healthy, prepare your own meals, and find time to go to the gym if you're in a rat wheel working a whack job. It's very difficult to do that, right? And guess what solves that? Finding a better career path, saving money, paying off debt, creating abundance for yourself. That's just very practical, very, very tangible. This is how it benefits you to just be a little financial literate, Now then we go into the moral obligation of Matthew 25. And if you haven't read Matthew 25, you should read Matthew 25. Read the whole chapter. It reads as one stream of consciousness. People want to separate it. It's the parable of the virgins and the oil, and then it goes into the parable of the talent, and then it goes into the parable of the least of these. And here's a reality. Christians, we should want to help and serve people. We should want to make the world a better place. But you know what? That takes resources. Jesus said, you came and visited me in prison. Have you ever visited somebody in prison? You got to have a full day off to go and visit somebody in prison. That means you got to have the flexibility in your schedule to be able to bounce and go visit somebody in prison. He said, you clothed me. Have you ever had a bunch of extra money to clothe people? He said, you fed me. You got to have extra food. Food costs money, right? All of these things that Jesus talked about required resources. But we think that like we could just hyper spiritualize the being the hands and feet of Jesus to people. Jesus always met physical needs and then he met spiritual needs, right? He fed people in the middle of them learning about the gospel. And so this stuff is very, very simple. Money answereth all things, right? I think that's Ecclesiastes. Thank you. This stuff is very simple. And it's not to say you should be rich or you should be poor, right? It's to say, what is your capacity? It's to say what talent and abilities and visions has God given you, right? What can you do to be a better steward of your job, right? That you don't view your job as some overbearing job that you hate, but you view your job as somebody that's like a venture capitalist investing in your business. And a lot of this stuff is super simple. Those of you guys that are not married, those of you guys that don't have kids yet, hear me on this. Life gets way harder and way more complicated when you have a family to provide for. It gets way more complicated. So if you're being an idiot in your early 20s, guess who's going to be paying for that? Your future spouse. Your future kids that you're going to have to drop off at daycare because one of you can't afford to stay home because you're so wrecked with your finances. You're paying back so much. You have such a high overhead that now you got to pay somebody else to raise your kids. Right? We didn't want any of this stuff. We didn't want it. We knew one of us was staying home and my wife was way better equipped to raise Levi than me. Right? And so she stayed home. We knew we were going to make that sacrifice. We looked at the numbers and we said, yo, the average family actually takes home less when both parents work, when you factor in dry cleaning, extra laundry, gas, right? Commute, childcare. The average family actually takes home less. We knew that was a value of ours. So we were going to scale back. We're going to make sure that one of us can stay home. Monette was able to stay home. And yo, I want to buy a house in California. I don't know where you live, but to get a house in California, I need money. You know what I'm saying? I'm devising a plan. I'm working the plan, and I'm going to earn money. And to shame anybody for wanting to have abundance to bless people, to shame anybody that wants to start businesses so they could create economic opportunity, and to say, Jesus said, don't store up your treasure in heaven. ignoring what the context of the verse is and ignoring that it says in Proverbs that a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, right? And so, hey, man, you could do what you want, right? You could do what you want. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you where that ladder's at. I'm going to tell you where that ladder's at. If you made a mess of your finances, you probably need to really dive into some Dave Ramsey and clean that up. Get on a budget. Learn to control your money. Don't let your money control you. Learn to control your desires. Don't be ran by your desires. Learn to control what you eat. That stuff is all connected. It's wild. It's wild that most people who get out of debt lose weight in the same process, right? And if you're not in debt, oh my goodness, whoo, and you're not married yet, oh man, you are in a spot to really, really do some dope stuff. If you keep working full time, if you keep viewing your boss as a venture capitalist into your future business, if you download a simple freaking app called Robinhood and start investing a couple hundred, but you know, the average person, if they invest $100 a month from age 18 to 65 will retire a millionaire. $100 a month will make you a millionaire, right? I want all y'all, we could all be millionaires. Based on those numbers, now granted, a million is not going to be worth the same when you're 65 or right, whatever, but still, right? Invest money into this market, invest into this free trade system. And when you start seeing, money isn't good or evil. Like money is amoral. Money is simply the exchange of value. There's a lot of us that have a unique perspective and a unique skill set. And by the way, the more unique and the more scarce your skill set is, the more valuable you are. The more problems you can solve, the more valuable you are. And you're probably, the best thing to do is learn those skills to build your own thing and then and use those to serve and bless other people. You'll probably make more money doing that than you will working a job, and then use those same skills for your own business. Right? You guys see what I'm saying? I learned to do video and I got a job making way more money working for my church doing video. And then what did I do? I took those same skills, I refined them. I started doing video from myself and my artist, and I leveled up and I made more money than I made working at my church. Why? Because I had a scarce skill set. Right? And there's skill stacking and talent stacking. So if you do music, you can edit video. If you can edit video, you can shoot video. If you can shoot video, you can think through marketing ideas. It all adds up. You know what I'm saying? And so this is to those of you guys that are young. I want to drive this point home, man. And I don't know the demographics of this specific video, but goodness gracious, invest in yourself, invest in your businesses, invest in your ideas. Learn these things now, because when you have a family, it makes it harder. I'm just telling you, it makes it more complicated when you got to provide for somebody. Just practically, your overhead is higher. If you're in Southern California, you got to make at least $3,500, $4,000 a month. But if you're staying at home with your parents and you don't have any overhead, or you can live off $1,000 a month, go figure out how to make $3,000 a month. Pour that back into your business. Pour that into some investments. And the dope part about the Robinhood app, and this is just one app, there's all kinds of different apps, right? But the dope part about the Robinhood app is that money is liquid within 7 days, meaning if I needed that money in a week, I could sell off everything, right? And guys, I'm getting into this stuff now after I was debt free. Imagine if I never had gone into debt. Imagine if I had this mentality when I was younger. Imagine if I was dialed in and focused and really disciplined and self-controlled when I was a kid. This is where we're at, yo. And so I'm hoping to help you guys solve these problems by just giving you guys the stuff I did. Like this may not work for everybody, right? Like I might just be an outlier, pun intended, right? But you know where the ladder's at. The link is in the description. Go check out Dave Ramsey. Again, I would say you should pay off your debt. That's my opinion. As millions of other people have done it. I think after that, then you really got to start looking into investing and planning your next move, right? And planning what are you going to do next. Starting your own business or your own venture responsibly, right? I've never borrowed a single penny to start any of my business stuff. I've never had an investor. I've never had any of that stuff. I've never had a label behind me, ever, right? And I'm a full-time entrepreneur doing 6 figures. Again, maybe I'm a statistical anomaly, but I think we could all be statistical anomalies. I think this world is so obsessed with trying to trick you into being broke, into being poor, into being miserable, into being overweight, into being a mess. And then that deteriorates your family relationships, that deteriorates your mental health. And then we wonder, Why is depression and suicide up for the first time in a generation? So, I don't know. Defy the odds. Link is in the description. Thank you guys so much for rocking with me. Appreciate you guys. Congratulations to everybody who's already doing this stuff. Congratulations to everybody who's already working on getting out of debt and all these things. Again, my name is Ruslan. You guys can check me out. I'm a hip-hop artist, creative entrepreneur. You go to Kingstream ENT. My YouTube has the description, in the description for all these resources. It's just 2 links, and you guys can check that stuff out. But thank you guys so much, man. Appreciate you. And yeah, man, let's get to it, yo. Let's get to it, because there's a lot of opportunity out there right now. There's a lot of opportunity, and especially when the economy is down like that. This is weird, but it's a good time for those of us that are in a position to build wealth. If you're not in a position to build wealth, you need to stack cash as quickly as possible and knock out your debts. So, all right, y'all. Y'all have a good one. Peace.